To Boro Fan TV and the Monday Night Show with me, James Hutchinson. Tonight's show is obviously going to deal with the fallout from a huge weekend at Middlesbrough Football Club, one that saw Neil Warnock relieved of his duties as Middlesbrough manager less than a week after he broke the record for games managed in professional football in England. No time's been wasted in bringing in a replacement. Chris Wilder has taken over the hot seat. So joining me tonight to discuss all of this and a lot more are David Campbell and Damon LaRoche. Welcome, boys.
Evening. It's going to be a live one, I think.
I think people want to have their say as always. Boro fans, you know the drill. We look where your thoughts, no more so than tonight. We're anticipating a busy show, so we'll do our best to react to your views. So, without further ado, lads, let's get straight into it. Tonight, David, 2 days on, did the timing of Neil Warnock's departure surprise you, bearing in mind that we just earned a credible draw at West Brom?
Yeah, it did. Personally, I admitted to defeat, and I thought he was going to be here for the season because I thought after the Hull away, that was the ideal timing. So to do it straight after the game, after a positive result away at West Brom, it was very surprising. Obviously, now we've found out he found out on the morning of the game, but us as fans, you're thinking, what a point away from West Brom. It stops a rut. And then you're suddenly thinking, well, we're now without a manager. So, it's a good time and going into the national break, especially with the manager coming in, he can get his backroom staff sorted. The only downside for me of the international break is there's going to be a few players away on international duty, so he might not get a full look at the squad, but apparently he's been doing research over the last 2 or 3 weeks, so surely he's got a good idea about the squad moving forward.
We'll get on to other matters regarding Neil Warnock and his time and legacy at Middlesbrough Football Club. Before I come to you, Damon, Gareth Coles, first of all, got in touch and just said, over the moon, we have the right man. Warnock was not getting the best out of the team, but thanks to him, we're not a League One side. Credit to the guy, thank you. And I think a lot of Boro fans will echo those sentiments, particularly with regards to us not having to face a drop just over a year ago to League One. Damon, going back to the timing of Neil Warnock's departure or when he found out about it, 10 o'clock on a match day certainly doesn't seem ideal, but do you think that was probably in response to the reports that had been in some of the press earlier on Saturday morning?
I think so, James, because he said himself, didn't he, after the post-match, he said he read it in the newspapers. He said that they're looking to replace him, and I think that's a bit crappy, if I'm honest, reading it in the papers before being told himself by Neil Bausor or whoever's doing it behind the scenes. I just think it's all shocking the way it's been held as a club. I think we could have done it a bit more better and with a bit more dignity. But that's football, I suppose. You've got to pick yourself up and move on, and we have. And I think we've got the right man in. Just only time will tell whether he'll do the right job for us.
Yeah, and Damon, we're not really going to talk about the game at West Brom on Saturday because obviously there's a lot more things to talk about. But Neil Warnock, that is, certainly got a response from those players, and that speaks volumes about the relationship he had with those players, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, he had very little to work with, didn't he? He wasn't. I don't think he was backed enough for me, in my opinion, as well. But that's just my opinion. Other ones might disagree. But I think he's done well. I mean, bringing youngsters in like Coburn and who's on fire at the moment with his goal on Saturday. But definitely he's getting the best out of the players, especially Isaiah Jones as well. He had a good game on Saturday as well. But as I said, it's not about that. It's all about Warnock and how he'd done well for this club at the time he was here. So.
Yeah, Russ Hoggett's just saying there about Saturday morning in the paper, a certain newspaper. He felt it was unprofessional of the board. And sometimes these stories do leak out. They have a way of finding the way into the press and stuff like that. But David, there was much debate after the game with regards to Neil Warnock's post-match interview. Certainly didn't appear as though his departure was by mutual consent, did it?
Yeah, definitely not. The only person he gave a bit of light out of it was Steve Gibson, and we all know his relationships with Steve Gibson. It just showed that there's been a divide, and we touched upon earlier in the season, didn't we, when Kieran Scott was appointed. I don't think he was just blaming Bausor. I think there was a dig at Kieran Scott there as well, and we all wondered what the relationship would be like between the director of football and Neil Warnock and his backroom staff, and it appears he was trying to get the final dig in, and yeah, it definitely wasn't by mutual consent, put it that way.
Yeah, and Adam Middleton's asked, and I think this was the person, like you say, I think some of it was directed at Kieran Scott, but most of it towards Neil Bausor. Picking the bones out the comments, David, made by Neil Warnock, what did you make when he started speaking about Steve Gibson's role and him not being as hands-on as he was in the past and other things that are going on behind the scene? What did you make of those comments, David?
Strange. I think he was reverting to some of the transfer dealings in the summer as well. Obviously, the lad who went to Fulham, Rodrigo Muniz, was he a signing of Kieran Scott and Bausor, or was he of Warnock's and the recruitment team? It's just left us with more questions and answers. Really, we're only getting a spin of Neil Warnock, which is I watched the interview on the Boro website yesterday, and it just asked more questions to us as fans. We didn't really get the answers of what we've all been speculating over the last couple of months. And it's going to continue with that. I'm sure a January transfer window will come along and we'll be asking the same questions. Are these Wilder signings, or was it done prior to Wilder coming in? So, yeah, I think with Steve Gibson, it was a bit upsetting where it showed when he was saying Gibson's not been involved within the club. We all knew he took a back step, but it seems like Kieran Scott and Bausor took on a lot more within the football club, and Gibson's took a back step. So, you could argue that that's long overdue as well.
Yeah. And Damon, Zach Buckley's asked the question, and a lot of people are mentioning Neil Bausor at the moment. Zach's asked there, do you think Bausor should go instead? He's let down the club. But do you think, in a way, that's just not going to happen now? Because it seems as though Neil Bausor has a tight relationship with Steve Gibson, Kieran Scott, and already in his first interview with the club, Chris Wilder's alluded to them all singing from the same hymn sheet type thing, and they're all going to be working together. So do you think that's just a non-runner, that, isn't it? Or do you disagree, Damon?
Well, I'd like to see him go. I agree with Zach. I'd like to see him go, but I don't think it'll ever happen, in my opinion, because Steve Gibson likes him and he's a yes man, so to speak. He follows orders. Obviously, I think everyone follows the boss, don't they, if they're being told what to do, So, for me though, I've never liked Bausor. I just thought he's an arrogant man. Given that I'd said before the show started, before we come on air, James, about him not signing autographs. He said he didn't have time for people. So, but I mean, it's we're never going to get to know the ins and outs of what goes on behind the scenes, are we? We just as fans can only assume what's going on. But it's what you make of it, really.
Well, Damon, there's nothing to say Gibson can't come out like he did when we got relegated and come out with statements of what. And I've just seen Luke ask about.
I just think he's
come out and talk about it. And I don't think it's just about Warnock. He needs to come out and talk about. I think he needs to come out and talk about the past mistakes and what we're going to do moving forward. Because for me, it seems like why have I got reservations is because of the appointment of Wilder. He doesn't want to work with a director of football. And
yeah, I just think he's frightened, David, of coming out, because the last time he came out, he said we were going to smash the league, if you remember, and that went tits up, didn't it? So I don't think he's going to do that again. So,
but if he doesn't, he's going to have a divided fan base.
Exactly. I 100% agree with you, mate. I couldn't agree more. He needs. And I think that's what's missing. When we used to have a TV show where Ali Brownlee used to present it, I think we're missing some of that ilk. Yeah. Some people can come on and have to say. So that's why we do these podcasts, so we can have these opinions.
Mark Notson agrees with what you're saying there, David, about a press conference from Steve Gibson and a panel maybe including Bausor to help settle the rumours, and maybe that's a mute point. I'm not too sure.
I just think with a fresh, clean slate, you need that type now. It's been toxic and divided for the last 18 months under Warnock. So if he wants to set a new stone, which him and Kieran Scott both said on the website yesterday, they want to start a clean slate, I think the man at the top has got to come out and do that.
Right. Do you think... Sorry, I was just going to say, Damon, David, do you think that concerns you about divided, sort of like a toxic atmosphere in the club? Do you think this new manager will change that, or do you think some people now will carry a sort of like, not a grudge, but sort of like will be unhappy over how Warnock's departure has been handled and carry that over into the new regime now?
I think so, James. I think a bit of both. And the only way to turn around that is by getting answers first and foremost, but also results. You know, fans are very fickle when it comes to managers. They might not like a manager in charge. I mean, I've got my reservations, but if he starts going on the pitch and getting results, fans seem to start forgetting about the Warnock era and then are just jumping on board with the current and they forget the past. You know, it was the same with Tony Pulis. As soon as Tony Pulis went, everybody forgot about what stuff he'd done, and it was all about the Woodgate era. And I think it's going to be quite similar. One fortunate situation we are in is obviously we're going into the January transfer window in a couple of weeks. You know, 6 weeks' time or so. So he's got a lot of time to assess the squad and then make the changes in January. And I think he touched upon that, saying about 3 or 4 new signings, Warnock, when he left as well. So I think they'd already been planning for it as well.
Yeah. And I think, Damon, that's a key point there that David's mentioned. And it appears an issue with Neil Warnock, and what maybe hastened his departure was the next January transfer window, maybe some sort of disagreement about which players could be brought in or who would be brought in, especially with, it was no secret Neil Warnock was going to leave in the summer anyway. So do you think the big issue and what was the driving force in all this was what was going to be happening in January in the transfer window?
I think so, yeah. I think it has a huge part to play in it for sure, because Warnock wanted, as you said before we came on air, Warnock wanted a list of players and Kieran Scott didn't agree with it. Kieran Scott wanted different, and obviously Chris Wilder, he's already made the decision today that in January that Jed Spence and Hayden Coulson will be coming back from their loan spells. We have to pay a small fee, but I'd happy have them back, to be honest, because they shouldn't have went out on loan in the first place, to be honest. Not with our injury hit squad, and I think that's he highlighted that, didn't he, in his interview, saying about his injured squad. He needs to look into that because there's far too many injuries at this football club.
Yeah, is that happening regarding Spence and Coulson? I don't know.
It is, yeah.
I must admit, I've not heard anything, so I don't know.
It was on the News Now website, David.
Right. Okay. I haven't seen it, but
Joe Hamill's been in touch, boys, and he's just said, thanks for getting in touch. Joe said, Warnock saved us from going to League One, steadied the ship. He deserved better than to be sacked over the phone. And David Bentley, I always thought it was going to be a strange season, but the club's going another way. Whatever has gone on isn't fantastic. Whilst it's the right decision, the way Saturday was handled is very unlike Middlesbrough. He deserves better than that. About time we heard from Steve Gibson. But in a way, David, saying it's unlike Middlesbrough, there's a little bit of form for this in a way, because it has echoes of Gareth Southgate's departure for me, this, because Southgate left after a reasonable... Well, he won a game, so it was a positive result, but it again transpired that Strachan had been spoken to a number of weeks before he actually took over. He had discussions with Keith Lamb about taking over, so it's not as though this sort of stuff hasn't happened at the Boro before, is it?
No, and it happened to Gary Monk, didn't it, after Sheffield Wednesday? I mean, to be honest with you, stuff like that, as a fan, I don't really have a problem with, because it shows a forward-thinking approach from the club that they've already took necessary steps and they haven't just made a bold decision and then left stranded to say, what do we do? You know, the forward thinking it, and sometimes timing's not always perfect, But on this occasion, I wouldn't say the timing's been perfect at 10 o'clock, but going into the international break, let's not be daft here. Warnock will have known the rumours for a while. He even touched upon it.
Yeah.
He said he got told over the phone. Yeah, he might have, but if he's got the relationship with Gibson, which is what he's saying he has, they'll be going out, they'll be having a chat, they'll be going for a nice meal, and they'll be smoothing things over. So it's not as cut and dry as like he's sacked and we're not going to talk again. Gibson's a businessman, but he's also, a private man, and he will do things the right way as well. It's just as fans, we don't see that.
No.
David, did you read anything? Didn't he? When Cranker left, he did a handover of Cranker, and they went for a nice meal and what have you.
Yeah. And David, did you read anything into Neil Warnock's comments that Steve Gibson had allegedly told him that he apologised for what he'd done, and he'd let Neil Warnock down? Did you read anything into that, or what did you make of that comment?
I don't know about you, Jen. I found that extremely contradictory, really, because he's saying he's let him down, but in what aspect does he let him down? Was it he didn't back him regarding the situation of him getting muscled out the club with Kieran Scott, or was he indicating he wasn't backed financially?
I think it was financially, to be honest.
To me, I thought he has been backed financially. Sporore doesn't come on cheap. Saliki doesn't come on cheap. And you paid £6 million for it in South America, and that's a lot more business than we've done in years.
I think I've read today that we've got the 5th biggest wage bill as well in the Championship, which when you think it's now almost 5 years since we came out of the Premier League, so to still have the 5th biggest wage bill in this division, that is quite some backing and support in financial terms, isn't it?
100%, and these all come on with signing on fees as well. I think the majority of the fans are just seeing the Bamba and Lee Peltier signing and think we've had a transfer window which hasn't had to do much money, but I completely disagree. I think he has been backed financially. It's not just about the transfer fee, and Cooks, he was another £1 million signing as well. So, you could be talking around the excess of £10 million on 4 players.
Yeah, a lot of the people are getting in touch. Mikey Bowen and Gab Richards, they're saying he was well backed. Don't believe for 1 minute financially he wasn't well backed. Damon, do you think the events at the weekend, though, have maybe put Steve Gibson and other people behind the scenes at Middlesbrough Football Club under greater pressure following Neil Warnock's comments?
I'm not sure. It can be one or two ways. I think a lot of it could be dictated by the fans ourselves, getting the manager out if results ain't going right, and also just the squad in general as well. The players have a say so as well. Let's not kid ourselves, because players, if they don't get on with a certain manager and a certain philosophy how they play, then they don't want to play. They don't want to play for him, and they're down till, so to speak. But I don't know. It's up in the air with me, with it all. But I just don't know with it,
Okay. And David Anthony Lee Murphy's got in touch. Thanks for watching, Anthony. He said Wilder is clearly going to be changing things, but what's the most important points he should focus on first? We're going to get on to Chris Wilder later on, but what do you think's the first thing he'll need to focus on when he gets to the club?
For me, I think it's got to be the fitness issues and the injuries, because the season could have been, I'm not defending Warnock here, but the season could have been completely different if we had a fit squad. Is that something to do with Warnock's training methods, or is there an underlying issue? I think Wilder needs to come in and look at that first, and the rest of that just follows suit. I don't think many people are going to judge his results up until January, to be honest with you now, because he's coming into what he's got. So I think the fans will give him a bit of saving grace for that. So I think he needs to come in and look at what's happening behind the scenes, how it's run, bringing his coaching staff in, because we presume Leo's staying. Yeah. But other than that, we need to get a good coaching squad and get them adapted to each other's coaching abilities.
Yeah. Jason Coleman's got in touch, and I think a lot of people echo these statements, Jason. Right decision, right time, just the way it was done was awful. Warnock knows the people that matter have huge respect for him and what he did. Yeah, great points, Jason. what I was going to say next is, I know we all have our different thoughts, David, about Neil Warnock and when he maybe should have gone and how long he should have been associated with the club. What's your take on the matter? Because we were talking about this before we came on the air, and we differ very, very much on when we thought Neil Warnock should have been at the club till. I mean, what's your thoughts on things?
Yeah, first and foremost, I've got huge respect of what he's done for our football club in terms of keeping us up. You know, we were in real danger of going down, and I'll never, I'll be eternally grateful as much as the rest of all the Boro fans will be, because we were heading down that awful road to League One. But in the summer, I thought he could have gone, but he's done a good job in terms of getting rid of the deadwood as well. So there's a lot of bigger picture of what he has done. People might just talk about his results the same as what they did with Tony Pulis, but sometimes what you do behind the scenes doesn't get talked about and gets forgotten about. And he stabilised us financially.
Mm.
The reason I disagree with you, James. The reason for me, I thought he should have gone after the keeping us up, is because I wanted a long-term strategy, and I just thought with this season being behind closed doors last year, it was an ideal time to push on. You look at the 3 clubs that have gone up this season, and for me, it was a lottery, and it just seemed a wasted season last season by keeping him in charge. And then this season, he could have gone in the summer again, but you were doing another transition period by bringing, was it 14 players in?
Yeah,
so
it's certainly been a lot for him.
Yeah, you can't bring that many players in and then
I think it was 12 in, 14 out, I think.
Yeah, you just can't give them a couple of weeks into the season. You've got to give them a run of 12 games. And that's what, after I assessed him, was after the Hull, but obviously he stayed because of the record, breaking the record, and he's done that. And he's been a fantastic manager throughout his managerial career, and it wouldn't surprise me him getting another job in February, March, and saving some club from relegation to go out on a high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair points made. What about yourself, Damon?
Absolutely, I 100% agree with David. What he done for us, it wasn't just for us from saving us from League One football. The man off the pitch, what a true gentleman he was. Always had time for the fans. The QPR game, I remember vaguely when we lost to the QPR game. Stayed till about 11:30 at night. Came out the door. Always had time for an autograph. You know what I mean? So, and he I remember him said, "Don't you have an home to go to and stuff?" So it was great. It was great. He was a comedian as well. But I think on the field, I think he's dog and pony show at the end with the berating of the referees. I think that had a part of play probably in it as well. But that's what Warnock was about. He was a character. It's a bit like Harry Redknapp was when he was managing. But I fair play to the man. I mean, if he goes somewhere and keeps them up, fair play to him. He will always be a smoggy here, and he will always be a legend. So,
James, I know a few people on here might think, especially myself, has been bashing Warnock over the last 18 months. It's not that I've been bashing him. It's just he's done stuff that I don't agree with, like slating players in the press and contradicting himself. But for what he's done with the fans, and he's been open and honest, I can't thank him enough. But what's your thoughts on it? Because obviously you wanted to give him time after keeping us up, whereas I didn't.
Yeah, I just think it would have been. I know football's a ruthless, cutthroat game, but I think I really do genuinely believe we would have got relegated if he hadn't stepped in when he took over. And I just think it would have been harsh to have turned around then after he did that, and the commitment he's shown in coming up from Plymouth to do those games and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, I know apparently there was a financial bonus and all of that involved in it, but he saved our club, and I think its long-term future by keeping us up that season. And I think it would have been hard to then turn around and say, "Oh, by the way, we don't need you for next season." And I think then last season, as frustrating as it was at times, we weren't a million miles away from the playoffs. So it just felt as though it was the natural progression to go on this season. But maybe I think just everybody knowing that this was going to be his final season and that there was going to be a massive change in direction. And as we said earlier, the appointment of Kieran Scott, and that's almost like a 180-degree swing from where you are with Neil Warnock. Yeah. And I just felt as though it was a matter of time. You were never more than 1 or 2 games away from a crisis. this season, and it just hasn't worked out, unfortunately. And it's sad. I mean, my overriding thoughts, I don't know about you two lads, at the weekend when you saw pictures the next day or even on the evening after the West Brom game of when the coaching staff and the players were on the pitch. I actually felt sorry. I felt sad for Neil Warnock and the rest of the coaching team. You could see they looked genuinely upset and hurt by what had happened. But as we say, that's football, isn't it?
Part of that, I was like upset by it because the way it's gone out, but relieved at the same point with my first emotion because I just thought this season was just going to be a complete drag and waste. But do you not think the likes of Mick McCarthy and Warnock that the game's moved on from their man management style as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think it has in terms of like I think it's a young manager's game, their philosophy, the way they play, and how they manage. I think the likes of Mick McCarthy and Warnock are more defensive style coaches. I think you sort of younger managers like your Eddie Howe's, your Chris Wilder's are more attacking, if you know what I mean. But only time will tell, as I said. We have to give the lad a chance.
Yeah. Damon, I was just going to say, Neil Warnock mentioned when he left, he also mentioned among a number of other things, that he understood that the club want to look beyond this season. But he thinks that if he'd have had the full support of the club in the summer, we could have got promotion this year. Now, are we about to start now? I think we've got, 29 games of the season to go. Are we about to start the longest pre-season ever ahead of next season? Or are some people already writing off what we can do this year? What do you think about that, Damon?
I think for me, this year is probably... I think I'd love to say if we get the right personnel in January, I'd love to say push for playoffs for me. But otherwise than that, I'd love to see us just have a really good go next year. You know what I mean? And just try and get as far as we can. But then again, the teams that are coming down, they're going to get the money and the parachute payment, so it's always going to be tough. No matter what.
Don't think they would have made that change what they've done if they don't think playoffs is reachable.
Well, that's what I thought.
I think you talk with 4 points outside the playoffs now, aren't we?
Yeah. Four. I think it was 4 or 5 points, something like that.
So,
I mean, David, is that a sign that Steve Gibson's still very ambitious and he wants promotion as soon as possible?
Whether it's Steve Gibson or it's Kieran Scott trying to show his muscle coming into a new club, I'd say it's probably the latter. To be honest with you, I think Kieran Scott, it's his first head of football, and I think he's going to want to show what he's made of. And obviously, he's been brought in to make these tough decisions. So, yeah, you could say Gibson's splashing the cash, but with the ideas and the philosophies, I think that's all Kieran Scott.
What about this, David? Adrian Hewson's got in touch. Thanks, Adrian. And he said, not only just looking at what Neil Warnock's achieved on the pitch in his time at the Boro, but probably of equal importance is the fact of who he's managed to move on from the dressing room and getting rid of certain bad apples. And that's been a huge job that he's taken on and no doubt helped Chris Wilder in what he's going to do in the future, isn't it?
Yeah. You can believe that either way, though, can't you? Are the bad apples because they weren't getting played, or were the bad apples because of the way they were acting in the dressing room? For me, and one of my issues, what was with Warnock, should I say, is he was getting rid of players who had an opinion, and he was throwing them under the bus, the likes of your Akpom. So he's calling them bad personalities. Are the bad personalities just because they're questioning because he's not playing? And for me, that's bad management. I wouldn't class that as a bad apple. We all knew the likes of Britta Somblonga and that we're going to be moving on anyway. Right. But the Spence, Opinion, Coulson, Wing all said they wanted to play, fell out with Warnock, and look where they've gone.
Yeah. Steve Davis has got in touch there. Thanks for watching again, Steve. He's just said it's all to play for this year. Hit the ground running and push on. We do have a squad capable of competing, and with a few additions in January, playoffs might not be far away.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And David, you mentioned as well about that it's been very up and down, and you're always like a game or so away from a crisis this season. Damon, do you think now that Chris Wilder coming in, that'll bring some stability to the club and settle things down, or is that certainly what the club hope for? But do you think that will happen?
I think it's certainly what the club would hope, and I hope it does happen. And he gets these people playing the likes of Tav, because in the last few games he's had a nightmare. He's been the worst player on the pitch, in my opinion. But I hope they do push on for me, and us fans can only hope, can't we? So, and get the playoffs, because I think Steve Gibson wants that, and he doesn't. Even if we go up and come back down, I don't care, as long as we got the money. You know what I mean, behind us.
But you know what frustrates me, guys? So he gave the money to Gary Monk, sacked him, and then gave Tony Pulis nothing. Oh, yeah. And we seem to be doing that time and time again. So what's different now to why would we give Wilder the money and not Warnock? That's why I think Gibson needs to come out and talk to us, because fans can understand and relate to it a little bit more if he gives those answers as why he wouldn't give the money to Warnock.
Is it though? Do you think it's? I don't know if you lads agree. Do you think it's a different philosophy that he's being told by Wilder to when he interviewed for the job, or do you think same with Warnock, or who knows what goes on behind the scenes? You know,
Quite
we don't
possibly,
know.
But he could have given Warnock the money 18 months ago. Then, when he took over from Woodgate.
For me, I think he was backed to a point, Warnock, but I think the likes of, I wouldn't call you free agents being backed. I think it's the permanence that you're looking at. Your likes of Piero, and Piero wasn't a Neil Warnock signing. He was a Kieran Scott signing, as James mentioned before the show started. But I just think this appointment is a good appointment, but only time will tell. I have my reservations, just like everyone else does.
Well, lads, before we talk about that new appointment and Chris Wilder, I'll let you just each say a little piece about Neil Warnock and your thoughts on his time at the club, what he did, and just anything you want to say, lads. Your chance to do that right now. So, David, come to you first. Neil Warnock, the manager at the Boro. What about it?
Just appreciate everything he's done for the club with saving us. We could have been talking a complete different story of trying to get promoted to the Championship. It wasn't for him, because I generally thought we were on the verge of relegation under him, and I hope he enjoys his retirement. First and foremost, at his age, life's too short, and we know what football is. It's cruel, and he deserves to have some time with his family and his grandchildren and go away. And to be honest with you, I feel sorry for the way it's ended, because he doesn't deserve that. But football's football, and you soon move on and forget about it. So I hope he comes away from the game, stops watching it, and just enjoys his family life.
Yeah. And yourself, Damon?
Well, on behalf of me and my father, he's been magnificent for us at the time he was here. Results haven't quite gone his way, and that obviously what happened is what happened. But I wish him all the best. I hope he gets another job or enjoys his retirement, as David said, and fingers crossed he does well for someone else. And but I'll never forget, he's a true gentleman. Always had time for the fans. My dad's probably the only one he's written to, this Boro Manager, and he's had an autograph sent to him. He got a letter back from him. He was the first Boro Manager to do that since Tony Mowbray.
Yeah, it speaks volumes about him. He is a very good people person, isn't he?
I'll never forget him, and he's, like you say, he'll do great. But he'll always have time. If he ever comes back up here, he'll always be welcomed at the Boro, no matter what.
One thing for sure is his record's not going to be broken, is it?
No, I don't think there's any danger of that. I don't think so.
It's only David Moyes, I think, could break it, isn't it? Something like that.
600 games behind, isn't he? So it's a fair bit to go there on that count. Yeah.
What's your thoughts, James?
Pretty much echoing what other people have said, and I just think he's done as much as he could, I think, at Middlesbrough Football Club. I mean, I think it'll be one of those that in years to come, further down the line, people will appreciate even more what he did. At the moment, things are a little bit still. I think fans are desperate, and I use that word desperate. I think Boro fans are desperate to see the side get near the Premier League, and it's been frustrating. The last 12 years have been largely frustrating, but I think when you settle down, look back at the bigger picture, I think a lot of Boro fans will say, "Do you know what a job Neil Warnock did when he kept us up, stabilised the club in a difficult time." And I just think Boro fans, I think, will always be grateful for what he did, and I think he'll be one of those people that if he ever did come back to the club, whether it be with another team or more than likely in a media capacity, I think he'd get a great reception from Boro fans.
Absolutely.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself.
But what I will say, lads, is I'm just going to look back at one of these other comments we got earlier on. What hasn't changed is obviously things behind the scenes. Obviously, we've got a new manager in charge now, but Dan Ty's been in touch, David, and he said a lot of comments calling for Neil Bausor to leave the club. Do you think that's an easy excuse to blame him for the recruiting, or do we have a genuine problem in that area? I think I know what the vast majority of people would say, but go on, David, you have your piece.
I'd say we've got a genuine problem with Neil Bausor. Obviously, we know he's got his new job within the FA, so it'd be interesting to see how that peters out at the end of the season. Will he be staying in the club and doing a dual role, or will he go in? But for me, how many times have we seen these players linked, come up for talks, nearly over the line, and for whatever reason, it just can't be concluded? Is it financial, or do we not sell the club? You could argue if it was one or two transfer windows, but we've had this going back before Cranker, where when Bowser's been there and we've just not got deals over the line. You know, it took us 3 transfer windows just to get Balassi to sign on that dotted line. Now that just shows there's a fundamental issue there. We're recruiting the players. You go back to when we were in the championship with Harry Maguire, Robertson, you know, Lindelof, they were all set to sign, and then they came up, all deal was done, and then the deal collapsed. So, you know, Bausor gets judged on his transfer comings. Obviously, he does a lot more behind the scenes, which us fans don't really see. We just really judge him on the incomings and outgoings, and there's been a lot of bad decisions, and ultimately, Bausor will take the price for that. He might be taking a back step for we know. Again, that's more answers we need. Maybe Kieran Scott's going to be taking that on board. So we just need to see how the next few transfer windows peter out and see if there is a change. We know Bausor was the problem, or potentially be the problem, and then we know we do need to make that change.
Yeah. Do you think that's part of the thing? I think you're not far wrong there, David, in that I think obviously Kieran Scott, I think, is going to take more of a lead on the transfers and negotiating and stuff like that now. And maybe in a way it's convenient to everybody at the club that Neil Bausor takes the heat for a lot of these decisions at the moment when, as you say, he's got that job coming up with the EFL soon. So he's probably going to take a back step of things at Middlesbrough Football Club. Does it make perfect sense that he's the one that cops all the flack and leaves everybody else that's going to be having a bigger say in things to get on with it in future?
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, we're a club as a whole, so Gibson's been part to blame, the manager, the players have, but us as fans judge the club on transfers in and out, don't they? And ultimately, that book has stopped with Bausor, so I do believe that a lot of it goes on Bausor's shoulders for the past problems. But for me, what I'd like to say is about Kieran Scott. I think some of the transfer dealings that we've done in this transfer window, I know he didn't officially start till September, but buying Sporora and with 15 league goals and promotion, we sign him permanently. Lee Saliki, if he plays a certain amount of games. We're approaching transfer dealings different. Now, if that's going to be the case moving forward, it shows what we were doing wrong previously, and that would indicate that Bausor was the problem. Just from speculation, I would say that shows he was the problem.
I don't know if you read on Instagram and Facebook one of the comments after the West Brom game that Neil Warnock was asked by a Boro fan saying, "Oh, I've left the club." When he said he's left the club now, and he said, "Do you think it's got anything to do with Neil Bausor?" The Neil Bausor was mentioned, and he went, "Don't say that name to me. I don't know what to do with that man." So, do you think that's sour? Do you think that's sour grapes, lads, or do you think it's just? Do you think it's something that? Do you think Neil Bausor is the problem?
Why have a dog and bark yourself as well, though? You know,
yeah.
for all we know, who's to say Gibson isn't just getting Bausor to do that dirty work? It's just speculation at the moment.
Yeah.
He's not hands-on, is he? As he said.
Yeah.
So
Ibrahim Tanner's got in touch and he said, we have limited information to form our opinions, which is quite true, Ibrahim. But we do see failed deal after failed deal, and that says a lot. And I don't doubt that it's difficult in this current climate, especially when we don't have the riches that teams do in the Premier League, and that money's all gone. We blew all that parachute payments. Maybe some people might find it less appealing to move up to the northeast. But Ibrahim's quite right there that there does seem to be, over a number of seasons, we seem to get so close. And yes, we've been linked with this player, and it's going to be done within the next 24, 48 hours, and it falls through. So
I echo what he said 100%.
Yeah, hopefully those things might be a thing of the past. But anyway, on to our new manager, Chris Wilder. The king is dead, long live the king, as they say. And yesterday morning, it was confirmed that Chris Wilder is stepping into the hot seat. Coming to you first, Damon, then I'll come to you, David. Happy with the appointment?
I'm happy, yes, but I have my reservations, as probably everyone else does. How is he going to play? What sort of style of formation? What is he going to be backed in the transfer market? Stuff like that. But I think it's a good appointment. As I said, he did well at Sheffield United. He hasn't got much experience apart from the Sheffield United, of course. It's been like lower league teams. But I'll give the man a chance, as everyone else, every other Boro fan will. But I think we've got the right man. I think. Okay. I think it could have been a lot worse. We could have had Sam Bloody Allardyce, couldn't we? So.
Well, Christian Lamb's very happy with Chris Wilder. Neil Cowan saying, welcome, Chris Wilder. What about yourself, David? How did you feel when that was announced yesterday morning?
Yeah, I'd just like to start saying welcome to the club. To Chris Wilder, and I hope he has a successful year at the club and get us back to where we are. But my main thought was shocked. I just seen what we were doing in the summer, and in my head, I just thought we were going to go down to a different approach and go down the foreign route again. I didn't see that coming with the Wilder. I don't think he plays the philosophy what Kieran Scott's known for. Expansive football. He's 3-5-2, and I just didn't see it. I just thought with the Piero signings, it just completely shocked me. Wilder came out and I've seen some stats. Wilder's only signed 4 foreign players in his time in the last 10 years. And then we've went and signed 3 in one transfer window. So again, that just brought up loads of questions rather than answers to me. I look forward to the era, but for me, it's got a lot of questions to be answered. We know he doesn't like to work with a director of football. We've come into a new, untried and untested regime with Kieran Scott, who's basically a director of football. So I just hope we get it right, because if we don't get it right and he gives him the money, we're back to square one. But I'm excited, but also, I do have my reservations.
I must say, before Wilder was appointed, I thought it was going to be Daniel Farke was going to take the job, because it was a coincidence he was sacked on the same day as Warnock. Do you know what I mean? And he got the result. Warnock didn't. You know what I mean? We got a point, but Do
you think the club's haste in signing or bringing the end of Neil Warnock's tenure at the club and bringing in Chris Wilder was because maybe they'd heard whispers that Chris Wilder could be on his way to Norwich as Farke's replacement?
Yeah, could have been, yeah.
Yeah. And going back to style of football and what you expect to see, David, what are you expecting to see from a Chris Wilder team? How do you think they will set up and play? How do you think they'll turn out for the Borough?
Oxford, Sheffield United, he's done the tried and tested 3-5-2. Now, if he goes down that route, which I'm going to, people say, I want to see 4-4-2. Formations, personally, doesn't bother me as long as it gets results. But as it stands, he hasn't got those players to play that. So he needs to find a different formula until we get to January and do the acquisitions to suit the way he wants to play. If he's doing overlapping centre-backs, you're not going to see that in Bamba. So, it's going to take some time. But, football is good and it is on the front foot. And I think as fans, we need that. because we've had dire football, but it's getting that consistency as right as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Damon, I don't know, I haven't seen, I'm not sure if anyone can correct me on this, but I haven't seen it mentioned anywhere about terms of or length of contract that Chris Wilder's signed. I don't know if you know anything about it, but I've not seen it mentioned anywhere in the press or on any sort of sites over the last few days. But do you think that's strange, or what do you think the club's thinking could be behind that?
They probably want to keep it quiet, but I've heard numerous sources like on TalkSport and other things like that saying he signed a 2-year deal. But I don't know. I mean, you believe what you want to believe. As long as I don't care, as long as he's here, you know what I mean.
Right.
It could be a rolling contract, which is probably more than likely it's going to be, because we've made these mistakes in the past and we don't want to make it again.
Is that on Wilder, Damon?
You what? Sorry, David.
Are you saying he's on a rolling contract as Wilder?
He could be, yeah.
3.5 years, I've heard.
3.5
years.
Yeah. So I know it's been mentioned about, he said he's got long-term plans and he likes to commit to clubs for long-term and things like that, but I hadn't actually seen anything actual years or any sort of like dates mentioned. I know Patrick Wheatley said I think it's long-term, and Steve Gorby's also reiterated what you've said there. Steve Gorby, we didn't have to get that butter top out for you this week, mate. Don't panic, but we'll address that at some point. And he said 3.5 weeks. Steve said so. It better be longer than that, Steve. We're not called Hartlepool United, mate. So
did that surprise you with the Wilder, James?
In terms of what's that, David?
The appointment.
A little bit. It did a little bit, because I think he will get linked with. And it just seems that this time of year, especially this final international break before Christmas, is when a lot of changes seem to happen. As we've seen, Norwich have got rid of the manager, Villa. But I certainly think it appeared as though he was closely linked with the Cardiff jobs, the Barnsley jobs. I dare say I think Norwich would have been interested in him as well. So I was quite impressed that we managed to get him to come here. I am a little bit surprised that he's agreed to work with a sporting director, but it appears as though in the conversations that they've had, it's gone really well and they're impressed and happy with each other and what they're going to be doing. So it seems as though it's all very amicable and everybody's looking forward to doing the best they can for the borough.
Nice. Do you think he'll come across as ruthless when it comes to like making decisions? Do you think he'll just like literally like put their meds on the chopping block, so to speak? Like say if Tav had a bad game, he'll say, "Well, you're out the team."
Yeah, I don't think he's a man to mess about with, Damon.
Well, that's what I thought. Given his interview, I don't know if you watched his interview on the club website. He comes across as that.
Yeah, I think he's got a very different personality to Neil Warnock, but I think he'll demand a lot of those players, and I don't think anyone will get the better of him and take him for a ride. Put it that way. I don't think.
Would you say it's a coup for the club getting Chris Wilder then?
I do. I think personally, I think it is. So. I think if you look at things, got to remember where we're at, David. One season in the last 12 in the Premier League, and this is a manager that 2 years ago won the league, the LMA Manager of the Year. And I know it didn't end up well for him at Sheffield United last year, but I honestly do think part of that was they got they won a lot of points and they did very well with the backing of the fans in the ground. I think them more than most clubs suffered from having no fans in their stadium last year.
Maybe,
and I think he's a really good manager, and I'm really excited about him.
I think it's a coup. I think it's a coup given the fact that Norwich and Aston Villa could have had him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He's that type of character that he probably could fit that job. But as John Terry looks like he's getting that Aston Villa job anyway. So
Jesus.
Well, I'd definitely rather have Chris Wilder than John Terry. But there you go. I mean, David, we've spoke about is it a coup for us to get Chris Wilder here? But what do you think attracted Chris Wilder to Middlesbrough Football Club?
I think it's quite local as well, isn't it, for Sheffield as well? So he doesn't have to up sticks. You know, it's quite a similar club in fan base as well. So the transition period going into Aston Villa, which I'm sure he probably would have loved to have, he can put his foundations here. He can start from scratch. He can rebuild the squad, and I think he's probably excited regarding the new regime. You know, he knows what he's walking into, and we all know he likes a hands-on approach, and that's what this club needs at the moment. And I think that's what fits his philosophy. He's not walking in where he's got someone telling him what to do. He can get involved, and Kieran Scott can get involved because it's a brand new slate for both of them. And I think that's why it turned a little bit sour at Sheffield United, because he was used to having control of the whole club, and then when the DOF came in, he struggled to adapt to that a little bit. So, you know, I think it's an exciting time for both parties, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's what you said, David. It's stability and consistency we need, and hopefully that's what he'll bring to this football club.
Yeah.
And David, what do you think about Craig Sandback's got in charge with us, and he just mentioned there about Wilder possibly bringing back Spence, Ring and Coulson in January? Would you be in favour of those three players coming back in January?
I mean, certainly Spencer's impressed when he's been out on loan. If they were coming to the end of the contract, I would have brought them back. But because when they went out on loan, they signed that extra year's contract, I'd be reluctant to bring them back. I know he needs to come and assess them. The only way I'd bring them back is because they're not playing. But with Jed Spence, he's playing well. I'd say just leave him there and then assess him in the summer. But with Coulson, you could bring him back. But let's be honest, I can't see those two having a future at this football club. I just don't think they're a championship standard. And it doesn't matter if Jose Mourinho was in charge for me. I don't think he's going to get the best out of those two players at this football club.
Yeah,
No, I think they'll definitely be on Wilder's chopping block, so to speak.
Yeah, Lee Wilson's very much in agreement with you there, David. He said Spence, definitely the other two. They're not really lighting up League One at the moment, which is a fair point. And
I also get the other end of the scale, though, James, that he'll want to assess everybody.
Yeah,
so I can understand if he does bring them back.
Yeah.
But personally, I don't. I think you're just bringing Deadwood back for the sake of it.
Okay. Well, as we said earlier in the show, lads, we're 4 points off the playoffs, 14th position at the moment we're in. What do you think's a realistic target for the rest of this season? Bear in mind, it's 29 games to go. So what do you think is a realistic target this season, lads? I'll come to you first, Damon. What do you reckon?
Realistic target for me, probably top 6. If you get the right players in January, if you get them 3 or 4 that he's missing. But it has to be the right ones, and he'll know what we need. But he has to look at these players. I've seen he's been to the under-23s already and had a look at them. Hopefully, he might bring a few of them in. I mean, we saw what Josh Coburn can do. We've seen Williams Kokolo on the bench on Saturday. So a few more maybe he might bring Hackney back from his loan. I don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know what he's going to do, you know.
Everybody's going top 6 here. It has to be the playoffs. Are you in agreement, David?
Before this, any improvement on last season's league position, I would have agreed with. But the way it's been done and handled, it's giving fans a false sense, and I think it's a statement of intent. So if we're not going to be looking for the top 6, I think a lot of fans will be saying, well, why make that change?
Yeah.
So I can understand now why the fans are getting on board with the playoffs. I thought, realistically, early on in the season when it was under Warnock, I thought that's a big jump from where we finished last season to the playoffs. But because he's made this, statement of intent by sacking him, I think you've got to look at the playoffs. Otherwise, it's a very baffling decision for myself. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think we were, before all of this, I think I was looking at progress from last season, which was 10th. Between 10th and 6th, trying to bridge that gap this year. And as you say now, if you've made this decision at this time of the season, with so much football to be played, well, as you say, what's the point of doing it if you're not going to have a go this year? You might as well have a go. Although Lee Fields disagrees. He says, talking about the playoffs, you must be deluded. But my response to that well, why not? Because you see some of the teams that are already up there, with the greatest respect, why can't we be in the top 6?
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, we're 14th. We're 14th now. I mean, we're 4 points off the playoff. There's about 7 or 8 teams that are battling around us as well. The same sort of thing. I mean,
Yeah.
this league has probably been the closest I've seen it in a few years, to be honest. But as I said, if you get the right caliber players in, and then I think you've got to look to a. I don't know where would you strengthen, lads, if you could strengthen?
I think there's a number of positions for me. Depending on which formation he goes, I think if you're looking for a new goalkeeper, that's one thing for sure.
I don't think Lisa Leakey's played up to the standard either.
No, I think
I think you've got to give him a chance. He's just
Tomlin.
come, Damon. You know, he's. I think you've got to let that lad settle in. I think it'd be. I wouldn't be making any major judgments on him
Oh, of
just yet.
course, but I'm just saying he hasn't really set the world on fire as yet, has he? So
I'd always say number 10, but I don't think he's going to go that direction because of his formation. So if that's the case, then we definitely need cover at left wing back because that's for me. I think that's one of the reasons why we've struggled this season because we've been so unbalanced because of Bowler being injured. If you had a fit Bowler, then but we've got no backup to that. So I think that I want a number 10, but he's not going to play that formation. I just think Sparora would get a handful of goals if we had like a Lee Tomlin or Ramirez in the side because his movement is unbelievable.
yeah, I just think if you bring like something like a like say if you had another Gaston type of player in there, even like a Daroon type of player as well. Martin Daroon, when he was here, he was quality. Even if you put get another decent left back, and I'd say probably a prolific goal scorer as well. But who can you get? I mean, I still love to see, even though he's probably too old, Dwight Gale here.
But
I'd love
before
to see.
Chris Wilder came in, let's say if it was to say Warnock,
Yeah.
did you think there was going to be much activity in January? Because I personally didn't.
I think it would have been difficult for the club to commit to spending a lot of money when you know there's a new man coming in who's probably going to go down a different direction in the summer. So I don't think the club would have put a lot of money aside. I don't think, unless there was a real prospect of making top six. And with regards to transfers, I also found very interesting today that I think it was Chris Wilder mentioned when he got interviewed in his first interview yesterday that he said, we've got contacts with all the big players in the Premier League.
Yeah,
He's not talking there about actual players. He's talking about the main clubs and players that are going to be coming in January, which are probably going to be loan players, but that he anticipates will make a difference. So I think it'll be players that come in January. Won't necessarily be for big fees or anything like that, but it'll be players from clubs who are going to make a difference and that have maybe going down the route that Derby went a few years ago when they brought all those players in, like Mason Mount, stuff like that. That's, I think, the avenue they're going to go down in January, I think.
It can be really hard, that one, can't it? Because you could have the bounce back from that and be successful. But look what it did to us last January transfer window, how long it took us to gel.
Yeah.
You know, you touched upon you think it was like a little mini pre-season. I just don't want it to be another mini transition period in January because I think it's a crucial period of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of players I admire really in the Premier League that are playing now that I wish was in Middlesbrough's side, especially the two up top. Obviously, I'd like to see Dwight Gale. Realistically, Dwight Gale here, Eddie Nketiah from Arsenal here, but you're not going to get the likes of him.
No,
I don't think so, Damon.
I'd love it, to be honest. I really would. I think any Boro fan would, to be honest, James.
Well, lads, we've got the international break coming up now. Chris Wilder's first game in charge is a week on Saturday against Millwall at the Riverside. So, with us not doing a show next week, you might as well take this opportunity now to give your predictions for that first game at the Riverside under Chris Wilder. Damon, how do you reckon it's going to go a week on Saturday?
It's George Saville. He's going to come back here, isn't he? Get a good reception.
Do you think he will?
I think he will, yeah.
Right.
I liked George when he was here. I thought he was solid in our midfield. I think we miss him at times in that holding midfield. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Boro win.
2-0 Boro. Go on, David. What do you reckon?
I think we'll start with a win. It'd be interesting to see if we get any of the players back who've been injured, but I think we'll start on a high. I just think that the atmosphere will be electric.
Okay, right. I'll be honest, lads. I'm going to agree with you. I think we'll start the Wilder reign off with a home victory. I'm going to go along with Lee Wilson. I think it'll be 1-0. I think it'll be a tight affair. But I think
We
we'll
don't
get the
score
3
more than
points.
2, do we?
It's what? Sorry, Damon.
We don't score more than 2.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tight one, but I think all that matters is a win. And as we've said earlier, lads and David, I mean, a win there, and that could propel you back into the top half of the table and within a couple of points again in the playoffs with another home game against Preston to follow.
Yeah, you've just hit the nail on the head there. The 2 back-to-back home matches couldn't have come at a better time for this appointment. Look what it did after the last international break. I know it's the dream, but if we can get 2 wins out of 2 and get the home crowd rocking, you're up there. If we can just stay within touching distance up until January, because we know there's going to be a transition period and getting to grips with tactics and stuff, I don't see why we can't push on from there.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, I'm afraid, everyone, that brings to an end tonight's show. Many thanks for watching and for all your contributions. My thanks also go to David and Damon for joining us again, lads. Thank you very much.
Pleasure as always.
We'll return in a fortnight's time. Obviously, next week it's international break, so we won't have a show next Monday night, but we'll return 2 weeks tonight to discuss the fallout from Chris Wilder's first game against Millwall at the Riverside, as well as previewing the games at home to Preston and away to Huddersfield the following weekend. Until then, look after yourselves, enjoy your football, and up the Boro.
Up the Boro.